Right, so we're at 15:01. We'll declare the meeting open, and thank you all for your attendance. First up, just a reminder that the meeting is being recorded, and I'll also just ask for everyone to just switch their mobile devices to silent, or even better, turn them off altogether. I think we've just had Kayla join us as well. Kayla McDowell.
Yes, hi.
Welcome.
Well, thank you.
Right, and anybody else? Just having a look. Right, looks like that's all that's connected. So let's get into it. So first up, a couple of apologies to note. I have an apology from Angela Oosthuizen, CEO. She may join on the latter half of the meeting, but unfortunately unable to make it due to a prior commitment. And Arlene, I think you also mentioned an apology from Fiona McQuaid. Are there any other apologies? Right, so can I just have someone please move that apology be accepted, Sharon, and second, Matt. Thank you, Arlene. So noted. So we'll move on to the public forum. I'm not aware of anybody raising any matters during public forum. Just checking, Kata, from your side. Are you just attending? Nothing from your side? Okay. Carol, nothing you're aware of from public forum? Right. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll move on, and if there's a late person joining, we'll attend to it at that time. Are there any declarations of interest to note? No. Okay, no declarations of interest. Thank you. So item 5 on page 6, minutes of the Tekapo Community Board meeting, 2nd of February. Are there any alterations, omissions, or changes to those, or can we accept those as actually correct? Accepted. Can I have somebody move them as accurate records? Carol, and second, Sharon. Thank you, Arlene. Right, so we'll move on then to item 5.2 on page 13. The Community Board Financial Report. We'll take that report as read and just open up to any questions or comments. Anything around the table?
I suppose, is that just a placeholder for the bike stands, Brian, or is it the bike stand is 20,000?
Yeah, I think that might just be a placeholder. It's just a just on the right page. My PDF reader's gone to sleep on me. In trouble with this. And, but yes, that will just be a placeholder because I think we asked for approval for that last meeting. We had a budget estimate of 20,000 to purchase and install, so that's just been placed in there, I believe.
Right, other questions in the financial report? Okay, so we'll move on to item 5.3 on page 15, the Tekapo Community Board General Update. The author of that report is Brian, and we'll take that report as read. Brian, is there anything you'd like to add to that report?
I can just run through it. So just bear with me a moment. My other PDF reader wasn't gone to sleep on me, so just had to open it in another one. So Makatua Reserve developments progressing pretty well, albeit a bit slowly. Again, a bit more of a delay on the roofing line for the shelter I heard about this morning due to some COVID-related supply issues up north, but still hopefully won't be too far away. Just got to do some grass seeding in the coming weeks of the bare areas. I'll have a look next week about possibly top dressing the existing grass areas with that spare screen soil got there. But I think that's all under control. Bike stands, say that's ordered, so hopefully towards the end of next month. The artwork, I think Tom's that sorted out all right. Have a look at this corner when we've organised a walkabout with Steve, with whoever's available, 23rd of March. So we'll look at that one. And Lakefront Path development, I'm just going through the documentation, contract documentation that Offamuskel have prepared, just checking that off and getting that sorted. So I'd hope to get that onto sort of gets out for tendering this week. We might still make that. Yeah, that's very close now though. The Tekapo Hall custodian. So we've got a bit of information on that. Haven't done too much further with that. So yeah, still progressing that one. Would be a reminder, there's a bit of discussion. It's a general intention that it wouldn't include cleaning, is my thinking. Because we've already got a cleaner working there. It was really for other tasks. And also bear in mind, we don't have any budget for this particular service. So we've kind of got to figure out how we cover that, and just how we deal with somebody who effectively kind of want on call of doing bits and pieces now and then. So still working through that one. Any questions so far before I just rush on?
So Brian, just on the lakefront path development, so tenders yet to go out, but that final procurement document, is there a version of that we're able to view?
Yes, I think I did promise to share that with you, didn't I? Which I will do now. Yep, good reminder. Thanks, Steve. Yep.
And the Tekapo Hall custodian, totally understand the constraints around budget, etc. But just wondering, the approach, are you pretty much just putting together a job description and then are you going to advertise that, and if so, how? Or
at the moment we've got somebody identified also already working for council in a part-time role as our camping ambassador and a few other things around compliance, and I think he might be quite suitable apparently. So we've just got to probably just do a direct negotiation with him. As I say, it's a bit of a hard role to define in terms of budget, to actually put out an employment kind of contract, because it's, yeah. So if we can package it up with the other tasks he's doing, that could potentially work quite well as our approach at the moment. So yes, we'll want to finalise that job description, and we'll come back to community board, and I think Tom was discussing it with, did I get this wrong, Carol or Chris? Yeah, so working with her a little bit, and we'll try and sort out the job description and how we can best package it up.
Thank you.
The Hamilton Drive Reserve Fire Break. I'm not sure if Tom has joined us. No, it's him to Tom. So I was talking not long.
Yeah, so basically I popped up there with one of our contractors that's done a wee bit of work for council before, and had a wee walk behind the Tekapo sections, and actually met up with Carol, which is really useful, who gave us a bit of a tour through what has historically been a council fire break behind all the Tekapo sections. Yeah, initially we thought the job was just going to be looking at the Lochner subdivision edge through there, but it sounds like it actually needs a lot more work through there. So we're just looking at getting a quote at the moment from several different contractors to see if we can actually extend what's already there. But yeah, again, we've got a few issues with some tracks. Those are actually going to get damaged and actually putting in a fire break. And then we also need to consider the plantation that's been put in behind the old fire break that's there. Is once that sort of grows up a bit more, it's going to probably start blowing through. And I mean, if we did put something through there, it's going to need to be a lot wider than the 5 metres we initially thought would put in. So, yeah.
We're having a discussion with FENS as a all of council approach on this matter, because if you have a look, the sort of report that's come through, you may or may not see that, is pretty detailed. It's got a lot of work by us, and it's got a lot of work by other agencies, and obviously to be effective, there's got to be a coordinated approach. So we've got a workshop. We were hoping that they were going to come and talk to you at this meeting about that report. They've done some prioritisation of it and some estimations of costs, and they're presenting to council. Help me, Arlene, I think, is it the 15th? Is it the next Tuesday? Might be the following Tuesday, just to actually work our way through some of the issues and how do we make sure, one, we may not have initially enough money to do the lot. How do we do what is the highest priority? And then it's not, unfortunately, just a one-off. It means then, as Tom's alluded to, maintaining that on a regular basis. We have, I think, added a little bit more into the annual plan next year to help address this or part of this. And some of it obviously could come out of the forestry budget as well as out of the community services budget. So we're sort of trying to take an all of council approach to the best way to do it, but also making sure ECAN, LINS, Department of Conservation are all on board. So in actual fact, you know, we're as strong as the weakest link, if that makes sense.
So the additional feedback that council or staff seek from community board at this stage, Tom, have you got the relevant information from Carol? Is there anything further we can assist with at this time?
I think we were going to offer you to come into the briefing with the councillors. I'm not quite sure whether that's going to go ahead, because we were going to try and get Craig to your meeting so he could explain FINS's position. So I think it's important that maybe we organise at least either you come in with the council part or separately a FINS briefing. But Arlene, are you able to update me on where we've got with that arrangement? Are we thinking of a separate meeting or a combined one?
Yes, I invited Craig to come to this meeting. Unfortunately, he had another appointment at the same time. And so Sam was going to invite the community board to join the council workshop so that he could speak to both groups at once. I wondered if you had heard from Sam on that. And if you haven't, I'll chase that up. Has anyone had an email?
No, nothing at this stage.
Okay, I'll chase that up then. But you definitely haven't been forgotten. So.
Thank you, Arlene.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, not especially. We were just flagging what started off. It seemed like a relatively simple sort of request to put in a small fire break, sort of rapidly expanded into some more issues once we started looking into it. And I'm still not that familiar with the whole site. So we were just raising the awareness that we were looking at this, and just if you had any knowledge of the history of this area or its purpose or any other thoughts around this particular area that would help us, help guide us in what we do or not do. But as I say, then David sort of expanded into the larger FIN sort of interest in the project as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Chris?
Yeah, through the chair. I just had one question, and now that this has been brought up. A year or so back, a resident did ask me about fire breaks, but not on the area that you've noted in this picture, rather on the other side of the river, the trees backing onto the new subdivision, Riverside subdivision. And there was some concern if there was a fire that started towards the lake end of that plantation, that it would whip up that gully through those trees that are getting quite thick, and there's sort of no fire breaks or fire retardant trees planted where that subdivision is. So sorry to throw another area in there, but just wondering whether that had been looked at or considered.
The FINS report covers the whole of the perimeter of Tekapo. So it incorporates roads where fires might start. It incorporates all the power lines. It incorporates all the tracks that we run, that DOC run. It talks about how, if there was a fire, how we would evacuate. It talks about notices. It's actually a very comprehensive document, but being very comprehensive, it's also very expensive to deliver all of those things all at once. And that's why we've asked them, what are the priorities? What are the worst? And they've done a whole pile of different modelling around wind direction at certain times of the year when the risk's high. So they've done, it's quite an extensive piece of work done by, I'm just trying to think, SciCon, I think, is it? Yeah, SciCon, which is a specialised in rural fires. So they have all been covered. It's just a matter of then of seeing who's responsible for what, who can afford to do what sort of timetable, what are the highest priorities. And like I say, in the long term, I think the landowners are going to have to build enough to maintain it, but there's an initial cost, I think, to maintain the network. For example, in the forestry, they're talking about, I think, a fire break that's as high or 1.5 times the height of a tree. Well, that's a pretty big fire break. and there's sort of some implications on some of those. So there's a number of issues we want to work through, but it's a very comprehensive document, and now that we've got it on our table, we need to consider it and potentially address the issues in it.
Just to confirm as well, the south side of the river is actually private property. It's not council property through there.
Oh, okay.
Where is that side? That's Swordsman Station.
I think he's talking about the River Science Division.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So along the river is private.
Yeah, so the south side of the river, it's private through there. I just had a look at the property information.
I may be wrong, but my understanding is that actually there's quite a big setback on for a no build along those sections. Yeah, which probably covers part of that. I don't know what the intention was there, but
It's more geotech.
okay. Through the chair, can I just ask a quick question? Can somebody clarify to me the a little bit of background on the windbreaking pines, that group of trees there that are outlined in blue on the map? What's the history there? What are windbreaking pines? Why are they there? And what are they breaking the wind for? Anyone?
Yes, I just noted that on the map when I drew it up, just after talks with Carol, and we were just slightly concerned that if we were to take those trees out, there might be a bit of an uproar from some of the local residents, just because when that southerly comes through, it's going to whip through that spot there.
They're just big old pines, that's all they need to be considered.
Okay, right. So not officially windbreaking.
No, just don't chop them all down at once.
And to be fair, most of those are, this must be a relatively old picture. This is that not.
Mr. Chairman, the briefing is on the 15th of March. I'll make sure that Sam sends out. She's got a time, but off the top of my head, I can't remember. It's about an hour. It looking like this, it might be 2 to 3, but don't write that as gospel. I would send you a copy of the report, but Fins have said that they want to keep it in limited distribution while they talk to all the stakeholders. And you have a look at the stakeholders I've got here. It's talking about ECAN, ourselves, obviously, Department of Conservation, Fins, users, power companies, property owners, community, mountain club groups. There's a wide range of people, and they want to actually share it with those major stakeholders who they've named prior to it became general distribution. I'm not sure, Brian, have I sent you a copy as part of the organisation, obviously, but I'm just a bit reluctant to send it any further. And that's why it would be good to be in the briefing, because then you could ask them specifically, and then they have the responsibility of distributing it to you direct. But it's broken down, each one of those lines that Tom shows on his map, into individual sections, and some of them will be broken into 10 or 15 different sections about different treatments they're expecting, different widths, and different property owners' responsibilities. So yeah, quite extensive, like I say.
Okay, no, very good, Dave. Thanks. We'll look out for that meeting invite. Brian, back to you. Walkabout.
Mr. Chairman, I think just the last item here about the little walkabout organised, and those are the areas sort of identified we could look at. I sort of added this Hamilton Drive Reserve area, whether that was worth looking at, but it may not be now with this sort of the Fins kind of taking Fins report and discussion, taking the lead on what we might be doing around fire management. So you see, unless you've got any other spots you want to add to that list, or any other issues you want to look at. We've been doing a little bit of work on the bins, and we've taken, we were renting these things called big belly bins, which we're concerned about the rental costs, and after quite a bit of deliberation and backwards and forwards, we've decided to take them out and run with a different brand of bins, which are the big square bins, which there's also already a set down on the western sort of car park on the reserve frontage near the playground, and we'll just look to put those into wherever we want bins in the town centre. So we might just have a look with you. I know there was one location of the bins down below sort of the plaza corridor that somebody had mentioned weren't in a good position, given that was supposed to be a view shaft. So we haven't put, we're planning to put them back there, but whether we wanted an alternative. So that's why that's on the list. If there's anything else,
Can I just clarify the Hamilton Drive Reserve area? Ryan, that you're talking about, is that the cricket, what's currently used as the cricket pitch area, or are you talking about the area on the other side, on the opposite
No,
side?
it was really this area we're talking about with the fire break, that sort of area in there, because I'm not that familiar with quite the area exactly, other than sort of driving around there. So whether we wanted to have a look at that, or whether we're happy to wait for that discussion with Fens. So yeah, that may not need to worry about that one.
Very good. Any more questions for Ryan? Thank you, Ryan, and we look forward to catch up in a couple of weeks' time then on site. Item 5.4, page 18. Dave, will you be speaking to Johnny's report?
I will be. I apologise for her. We had a major clash today. Just bear with me a minute, Mr. Chairman. I was just pull it up. We had a major clash with Te Manahuna, and that's why Angela's not here. And we've also got a transitional meeting with the new water authorities that they're talking about, and that's why Joni is not here. So look, apologies. I was hoping Joni may have joined us by the time her report had come up, but we are doing business pretty efficiently, Mr. Chairman. So look, I'll take it as read. I'll go through a couple of highlights. Today, you may or you may not have known, but a group of us did come through Tekapo and Twizel, just with the representative central government, who have helped fund the desludging of the wastewater treatment plants, for example. So they were just checking on progress, and so they were very pleased. We did also explain to them they funded the work on the future of the Tekapo wastewater treatment plant, so we sort of briefly briefed them on that. So they were just checking on how progress was. You may or may not be aware, we've got to the end of June to finish all these projects, which are 100% funded out of the Tranche 1 funding for the water reforms, and we're going pretty well on that. Water main replacement, I see the contractor's actually established, he's established his yard, but and has started to pothole services up Aorangi Crescent, as far as I know, and I don't think he's actually started laying the pipe at this point in time, but is all prepared to do it. And we're doing, you may have seen the truck, I did see the truck actually in Tekapo as I came through, the CCTV truck intergroup, I think it's on the side of it, who are doing the cleaning of the sewers and the CCTV inspection. So if you've got a bored night and you'd like to watch some interesting TV, I can send you plenty of photos of the inside of your sewers. Might show you.
Thank you.
It's very entertaining. Or maybe I'll just send you a summary of where the faults are. It might be easier. I think you know enough about the school, the safety improvements that are being done. They're working on the Lakeside Drive, which is to get rid of that big ponding that we've had there. We put the sumps in quite a while ago, and it's just connecting them up to the swales. So that's being done at the moment. The bollards, the contract's been let to Netcon to do them. It's a little bit more complicated than what we thought, Mr. Chairman, because they have to lift the lids off, then put the new LEDs in, and then bring the lids back. So they need to transport the lids. It's a double site visit, unfortunately. But the problem is that we can't get new lids with LEDs in that fit the old bollards. So saying that they're doing, but we are progressing. And I haven't seen their work schedule when it's meant to happen. But as soon as we do get that, we'll let the community board know, so that at least you know that it's when they are expected in your town. I think I'd have to check. There's definitely some in Tekapo and some in Twizel. I think there may also be a few in Fairlie. I'm not quite sure, but I think Tekapo has the bulk of them that need to be done. So yeah. Regional investment opportunity works. Shared footpath, you'll see that going up there. They're doing that again at no cost to ourselves. It's all been done by Waka Kotahi. And then Joni's pulling the information so that we can get the CCTV in as soon as we possibly can. So it's a little project, and I'm sorry she's over the detail. I'm not. I'm not sure if any of you have been up and seen the big desludging of the ponds. It's a It's like a big burger, I suppose, a big sausage there. I was up there this morning, and certainly a lot of sludge coming out, but the dewatering was happening well. They mix it with a little bit of polymer, which helps extract the water, and then that big bladder will sit there for 4 to 5 years. Well, it could sit there forever, really, but the idea probably let it stabilise for 4 or 5 years, and then we'd cut it off to potentially probably landfill, just because of you don't know what's in it. But I think your pond's been operating for about 60 years. It's the first time it's been desludged, the first pond, and they're pretty much through the first pond. The second pond, we think they'll get through in about 3 days. So I imagine that they'll probably be ready to de-establish off the site in Tekapo on Friday. If not Friday, it'd be early next week. And then they move on to Fairley. They've finished Twizel. You're the second cab off the rank, and then Fairley will be the final one. Over to questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Shaz, I think you had some questions just around the shared use pathway from Orangi to Peppers, and just the choice of asphalt as a hard surface.
Yes,
Just concerns around winterization.
Yes. Did we have any information about the type of surface that they were going to put in there? Purely because that is a area that's obviously going to be used a lot by tourists, and we know we're experienced with the Peppers pathways. They get very icy in the winter time. And had they, did we have any information what they were planning?
I'm sorry, I don't, but I can ask Scott, and I'll get him to send an email around. I'm sure they've been in contact with Scott over the detail, and if they haven't, he'll know who to get hold of. So certainly can get that out to you.
Very good. And then Dave, just on the CCTV, we just weren't clear, because we understood that previously quotes have been obtained. So it was really now a matter of appointing the chosen supplier and kind of getting on with it. But the report seems to indicate that we're still waiting on quotes. Is that correct?
We are looking at, we've got a couple of issues, Mr. Chairman, is that Council has a procurement policy that was adopted. So anything over $10,000, unless there's a report that goes up to Council that excludes it, basically we have to get 3 written quotes if it's under 50,000. If I wanted to go with 1 quote, I'd have to write a report. So what they are doing is just finalising the specification and just getting to make sure that we're getting proper value for money. We do believe that, the company we've been dealing in, and they know what the procedure is, have done a lot of work for us in really good faith. And so, but I just have to abide by the Council's procurement policy. I think we need to take it back to Council, because I think there's a few areas where it's a little bit archaic, particularly around exemptions to the policy where there's good reasons for it. But basically, we do try and make sure that I'd hate you to come back and say, oh, did you know that business was Joni's brother-in-law or whatever? And, we do have to make sure that we have got some transparency in spending public money. So that was all. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not able to share with you where she's at, because I don't actually know whether she's got those 3 quotes in and she's comparing them, or whether we're still open for them. And if she joins us before we're finished, she may be able to answer that. But again, I could probably get you to, do you want me to get her to send out a little email update on that project with a little bit more detail?
I appreciate that. Yeah, very keen to see that progress. Matt, anything else from your side? Sharon? Carol, happy? Okay. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for that. So next item on the agenda, item 5.5. General business and councillor updates. So what we might do there is just, Chris is back in the room, great. So the first question there was really from general business point of view. I think Chris, you raised this one, and the general business, just an update on the review of mandate restrictions.
Just when things are happening. Oh, the mandate restrictions. Oh, just I guess I think Matt explained that. You know that the mandate restrictions on community facilities are having a periodic review, I think we talked about, and just when that's scheduled next.
I suppose from a executive team point of view, we're getting guidance and look, I'm sorry, I wasn't there, but I know the chief executive and the mayor met with the DHB this morning to talk about COVID, and what they're just looking to is to maintain or put in appropriate regimes or maintain appropriate regimes until we get over the peak, which we believe is 3 weeks probably following Auckland. Down here, you can see numbers are starting to climb. Part of that protocol is also so that we've got sites ready that if we need testing sites, and I think in Tekapo we set one up probably a fortnight ago, was it? Sunday, fortnight ago. There are a couple of places of interest that have shut down, unfortunately, in Tekapo because of staff with COVID. So basically at the moment, we are taking our guidance from government and from the DHB. I would say to you that if it goes according to modelling, we'll start relaxing those mandates in something like 4 to 6 weeks, just once we get over the peak COVID numbers. Like I say, I haven't been privy to the information that was shared this morning because I wasn't in there, but I do know that the chief executive and mayor, I don't know, Murray, whether the mayor's shared anything with you from that meeting? No.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for that update. The second matter there, the Tekapo Western Car Park improvements. We did have a catch up with Scott on site just over a week ago, and I think it was a very productive conversation with some real tangible good ideas in terms of short-term solutions or workarounds to improve the flow and lessen the confusion of traffic movement in that space. My understanding from that meeting was that Scott was going to summarise the actions we agreed to, and we would then add that to the action list with the intent that that would be addressed fairly soon. Carol, is that the way you understood that?
Yeah.
As well, and Chas? Yeah. Okay.
Is it on the action list? I think it's key.
So, Dave, did Scott report back to you on that meeting at all? Or was there any questions?
No, he hasn't. I knew that you had one program, but I wasn't sure where it was. Arlene, should we just put that as an action point? But I will chase Scott along and get it out. We'll just we could put an action point in there around the Western Car Park or Tekapo Western Car Park. Preparation of action points, including timeframes for implementation. Are we able to do that easy enough, Arlene?
Yes, that's fine.
Cheers.
Thanks, Arlene. Thanks, Dave. The next matter, the Simpson Lane footpath. What I suggest we do is it is on the action list, so let's just park that one for now. We'll talk about that when we work through the actions. These on there. The fourth item there under general business was really the passing of a resolution to authorise reimbursement for gifts that have been acquired. I think the one was for Chrissy and the other one for Angie. And just in terms of the correct protocol, we just need to pass a resolution for reimbursement. So Arlene, there's effectively 2 gifts of $50 each. Is that correct? And then is there a third matter around storage at the community hall? Chrissy wants to
Just reimbursement of some containers.
reimbursement of containers.
So I think Angie's already purchased them, and I think she was going to send a receipt to Arlene.
Okay.
That's correct.
So Arlene, have you received those requests from Chrissy for the containers purchased?
Right, so this is the first time I've heard of those. So it was how much for Chrissy, did you say?
So there's 2 gifts of $50 each, one for Chrissy and one for Angie.
Okay.
Both will be paid for one.
Yeah, both paid for by Sharon. So there'll be a
So you've got a
reimbursement.
receipt for one.
Yes, I've only got a receipt for one.
I've emailed you a receipt for one of them.
Right.
Haven't got it yet?
Yeah, I've had one receipt. Do you have the receipt for the second one?
I haven't got it yet, so
Okay.
I will send it to you.
Okay, yep, when you can. And then there was also another reimbursement.
Yes,
Was
I believe Angie's going to send you a receipt for some containers that need to be replaced from the kitchen. So it's not very much either. I think it's $50-something, but she was going to send a receipt to you. I think because she's assumed that's the right thing to do. Is there a protocol?
Yes, if it's containers for the kitchen, I suggest she sends it to Brian, or I'll forward it to Brian, because that will come, I guess, out of the hall budget. But with regards to reimbursement for the gifts, that usually traditionally comes out of the grants budget. So I'll deal with that. And as soon as I have that second receipt, I'll arrange for that money to be transferred to you. So I'll only need a resolution for that. The Tekapo Community Board approves the reimbursement of $100 to member Sharon Binns for gifts given by the Community Board. So I suggest we pass that one.
Yep, I'll move that.
Okay.
And can someone second it, please? And Matt will second it. Thank you, Arlene.
I've just written on the front of the envelope. Already done one.
Right, so just a couple of general questions. Just keen to understand as a community board where council are at with the district plan review. Is there any, Matt, are you able to talk to that? Or?
Yeah, can do. Yeah, I was going to update on that as part of my my spiel. So we workshop district plan review yesterday. It is certainly gained momentum. A steering group has been formed, and we have a work program currently sitting over the next 3 years to completion.
3 years.
Yeah. So it's well underway.
Yep.
And it's moving in the right direction to be completed this time.
So as part of that review, these other checkpoints or points where community consultation will take place. Well, not really consultation, but involvement from the community.
Yeah, there will be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a whole program which has been proposed, and there's plenty of points in there where we'll be coming and engaging with the community in each of the communities for feedback and engagement. Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Just on that, Mr. Chairman, the copy of the program detail is actually on the last council meeting. It was actually approved by council, so it is a public document. If you can't get access to that agenda, certainly happy to forward that report. It's all I say, it's lengthy. It's probably, I'm not sure, there was probably 15 or 20 plans, but there's a section in it that was actually Louise's report, which I think Matt's probably got the detail in it that they would be interested in. It had the timetable about when we were hoping to go out with various stages for community consultation, and that's about 10 pages, I think. So you could grab that and download that. That would give you a very good background to what council's proposing to do over the next 3 years.
I'm happy to forward that to you if you like.
Thank you, Arlene. That we appreciate it.
Through the chair. So if the district plan review is not expected to be complete for 3 years, does that mean that any of the bylaws or policy reviews that have already been worked on, and for example, the parking bylaw, does that mean none of those things will be actionable until the district plan is completed?
Bylaws are totally independent of the district plan, so bylaws need to be reviewed. And look, I'm not sure when we did the parking bylaw. Certainly, we've got on our priority list the speed bylaw as soon as I get the new rules from Waka Kotahi about how we do that. But you will find that we are intending to do a rolling review, and we've prioritised the various parts of it. So as they get done, they will become operative. So we're hoping that everything will be reviewed and we'll have an absolutely the best district plan in New Zealand in 3 years' time, but there will be stages where it will get implemented. Some of it, I would say, will be less controversial. I would suggest there might be some controversial issues with it. I'm not sure, Matt or Murray, whether you want to make some comments. You've got more experience than I have about what's likely to be controversial and not controversial.
Well, I guess when you if you have a look at the document that you beginning at 7 and you see the programme, you'll see that it's been broken down into chunks of work. And those chunks have been prioritised based on officer and council input. And I mean, you'll see quite clearly which points there are going to give areas of more interest from the community. But I mean, you know, it's a whole. There'll be plenty of opportunity to receive that feedback, and yes, there will be controversial areas. That's to be expected.
Yes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you wouldn't bother.
No, that's right. Yeah. So I think there's the top couple of priorities around zoning, business zoning, residential zoning, and the likes, and then everything falls into place like that. But yeah, if you have a look at those pages that David was referring to first, that will give you a clear indication. It's a robust process, pretty complex, it's a lot to it, and it's going to be very time consuming for council. But it needs to be done right, and that's what we're doing. It's key.
Carol, there was also, when we met with Scott, there was a conversation around traffic management and removal of the directional signage to Church of the Good Shepherd. Do you just want to talk to that?
Yes, so this is something that's been requested probably for 3 years now, since the completion of the car park area and the landscaping at Church of the Good Shepherd. The brown sign, which points to the Church of the Good Shepherd and the monument on State Highway 8, pointing down Pioneer Drive, it was requested that that should be removed and a replacement sign points towards the car park for the Church of the Good Shepherd. And the real concern is now, it's sat for a while, Scott knows about it, we've talked about it several times, is that there are actually 2 buses already turned out. And of course, they're all milling down or parking down at the dock already. So the way it looks like tourism is going to start opening up in July. And unless we get in quickly with both clear signage, traffic management plan down there and good education for the coach companies, we're just going to have exactly what we had before. So, you know, the first thing was just the brown sign to be removed and a clear direction to the new car park.
There's 2 things. I believe Scott's had a talk to Waka Kotahi and they don't actually agree with that approach. So there's a few issues. I think what we've got to do is work out how we can put some notification in around the bus parks and some education, and I can talk to Scott about that. I think we're going to have to monitor the process and see whether it's actually becoming a problem, because what Kotahi is saying that they apparently control the brown signs on the state highway, and they are saying it's actually for all travellers, and so to shift it wrongly, they wouldn't agree with that. But look, let me follow that up and come back to you. I think we do have to monitor it. I think we've got to do, like you say, some education work with the bus companies. Particularly, I'd be very interested in which bus companies were not behaving, because we have done some education work, but that would be, you know, it's help me here. It's probably 2 years since we've had, or 18 months since we've had a lot of buses through. So there's probably new drivers, new situations. So if we can get hold of the main bus companies that we know are going to operate them, I think it's our role to do that education. And then we've just got to work our way through with the Waka Kotahi, I think state highway manager, I'm not sure what the name is. And if we don't get much, if we still believe it's a problem and we don't get much help there, we can actually take it to our Waka Kotahi relationship manager. There's another person that comes regularly. And I must admit, I have got a meeting scheduled up for them shortly to talk about a number of things in Tekapo, including, help me here, whatever the lane is in front of your new office, Steve, which we maintain, but they own, and they're very keen on us taking over. So there's a number of issues that are on the table around Tekapo, so we'll have a look at that. But I would be interested in knowing what are the bus companies that are actually not using the new bus stops, so that we can direct either letters to them or education campaigns. I might talk to Chris.
The new car park is for all travellers, so shifting the sign or creating a new sign isn't directed, especially at the buses, it's directed to all traffic.
Right.
There's only 25 car parks down Pioneer Drive, the rest should be directed to the main new car park.
Yeah, but there is also, it's a way of people who are driving past, if they want to drive past, disabled people, that sort of thing. That's what Waka Kotahi says there. Brown signs are directional signs to actual assets on the road, not actually to car parks. And so that's the debate that you've got, and you'll find anywhere throughout New Zealand that they're actually not pointing to offset car parks. They usually park or point to whatever the asset is. So there's a number of things that we've got to work our way through with them. So I recognise the issue, and I think we've just got to monitor the situation. Like I say, I'd be interested in knowing the buses that were staying down there. We have got some fairly active signs around no camping and things down there, even though we do get quite a lot of camper vans parking. I don't believe they're camping overnight, but certainly I must admit, every time I go through, I do go down and have a look at what the situation is. But I'd be interested in feedback and photos so that we can give some evidence to Waka Kotahi and see if we can find a solution.
So David, stage 3 of that project down there was traffic management. Is that still on the table somewhere?
Sorry, say that again. I didn't miss that.
Stage 3 of the church project down there was traffic management for Pioneer Drive. Is that still on somebody's table?
I would have to have a look. Scott has recently given me a copy of the Abley report, which goes through that. Now, whether that's the report or whether there's something else, I don't know. Again, I'm sorry, I might not know of all those, but I'll chase it up with Scott. And yeah.
So, Carol, would you be happy for us to just add that to the action just for visibility?
Yes.
Around the directional signage to the church approach is going to work in terms of the traffic management, because it sounds almost like a two-phase approach. What you're suggesting is one, removal of sign, and two, a long-term plan around traffic management.
I'd certainly welcome any evidence, Mr. Chairman. It would help us with our discussions with Waka Kotahi. It would also help us with our education campaign of bus companies. So, you know, names or even just photos, and just text them off to us or email them off to us off your cell phone would be great.
The trouble is that we don't have it at the moment, David, because we're trying to, you know, head off the problems that we experienced when we're at the height of the tourist season. So we don't have the buses at the moment. We just don't want to repeat those problems when they do arrive, and they will.
Yes, certainly, and it'll come up Kyoto, the destination management plan too, that really, you know, we need to be in control of what happens when the tourists come back. And this is a significant concern for Tekapo people. So yes, on the action list is a good thing, just to make sure the visibility of it. But you know, we're going to end up back in the same situation very quickly.
Well, like I say, I'd like to see evidence of the bad situation so that I can then have an informed discussion rather than, hey, we think this might happen. So I do, like I say, every time I go through, I do actually have a look. I make sure I drive down there to see what the situation's like. I also go through the other car parks. That's one of the reasons we set up the testing station in the bus car park, because we knew it was reasonably empty, and admittedly you do get quite a few camper vans and longer vehicles parking there, which is another issue, Mr. Chairman, that we need to put on your plate at some stages. We need a long vehicle car park in Tekapo, I would suggest somewhere, but I haven't got any suggestions of where, but that's something that, again, I need Scott to look at and come up with a few suggestions.
So, Carol, let's get that on the action list. Scott is aware, and there's been some conversation with Scott, so I'm sure Dave speaks to Scott as well, and maybe some ideas that come to fruition. So, Aline, if you could add that for us to the action list, that would be great. Thank you. Sharon, did you still want to have a conversation around the sports trust?
Just an update, really. There has been a official trust set up for the sports trust. It's going to be called the Lake Tekapo Recreational and Sports Trust. I think that's what I call it.
That's a bit easy.
Yeah. It has 5 trustees. It is able to have 6 maximum. And we're at the very early stages at the moment, just going through so we're just going through trying to finalise the deed, and once that's done, then we'll start to put together some communication strategies.
That sounds really progressive. I don't know whether Brian or Tom want to make a comment or not, but obviously council's got some seed money to help us with the idea of relocating the squash club, which I presume might come under the mandate of this new trust. Would that it'd be nice to have a group that represented Tekapo that we could talk to as we work our way through what that project's going to involve and where it's going to evolve. Am I on the right ballpark, or is it trust for something else?
Sorry, say that again because you cut out. You cut out again.
Sorry about that. I was just, it'd be very good to have someone like the Sports Trust to talk to about, things like the relocation of the squash club and things. Council's given us some seed money to progress that. Admittedly, I think only $10,000 this financial year, but I'm not sure whether Brian or Tom would like to make a
talk to about it. So there will hopefully be 2 members of the squash club, at a minimum 1 member of the squash club that will be part of the group, may not necessarily be a trustee, but will certainly be part of the board or the committee that falls underneath that. So yeah, it will be, the Sports Trust will be the main entity to talk to. So once we, probably in the next couple of months, once we get a little bit more set up, then we'll make contact with the council and start to talk further about the relationship.
Thanks, Shay. So, I've connected. Carol, did you still have a question around the new road to the motel or Craig Street, and whether that was ever going to be connected to Murray Place? Is that matter that's done? Okay. And did you want to raise any questions around the green organic?
Yes. So we received an email from Chris Clark last week, I think it was, notification that we're all going to be receiving green organic wheelie bins, which was the first that we heard of this. And as a holiday home manager in Tekapo, we can see that's going to be quite fraught. Can you please tell us about the thinking around that and how you think that's likely to be managed from a visitor point of view?
2 things. I can't make any comment about you haven't heard, because it certainly was in the long-term plan. It was meant to start in October. It got delayed because of the delay of the LTP, because we couldn't put an order through. So I think it's been in part of the waste strategy. We need to remove the organic, so in actual fact we can access then the Timaru waste landfill. We're intending to roll them out mid-March, I think maybe the 21st, starting, or maybe the services started on the 21st. It might be rolled out a bit earlier than that. We've got some broadcasts. Again, no different to other holiday homes. There needs to be a system that those landowners, anyone who's got wheelie bins, the yellow and the red one, will receive a green one. The green one will be the same size, I believe, as the yellow one at the moment, so a 240 litre bin. They're being assembled at the moment in Timaru, and so we've got some publicity. Obviously, I'm not quite sure how people manage their red, yellow and green bins in holiday homes at the moment, but I presume they'll have to have a similar arrangement to reuse their green bins if they wish to use them. I imagine a lot of holiday homes may have contractors who come in and maintain, so maybe they won't have a use for the green bin. Apart from, you'll be able to put vegetable scraps in it, so if you're cooking vegetables and things like that, and potato peelings and all that will all be able to go in there. We are going to send out an information brochure. I could actually bring it up on screen if you'd like to have a look at it, about what can go in the various bins. And so it's all rolling out. I'm sorry, I don't know what Chris sent out to you. Apologies if that's the first you've heard of it, because certainly been on the books for, well, ever since I've been involved with Mackenzie District Council, and it was just delayed because of our LTP. So not sure whether that quite answers your question. Not being an owner of a holiday home, I'm not quite sure how these things always work, but
I guess the thing is this, how is this being communicated to the community.
Everyone's going to get a brochure that's going to come out.
I'm surprised, through the chat, I'm surprised here actually that this comes as a surprise to you guys. Because we've been strongly advocating it's been on the agenda due to public demand and requests for a green bin collection service.
We've never heard of it. Never heard of it. Never been raised in any of our meetings. It's not in the last 2 years. And I'm not spoken.
Well, that's interesting. I find that quite interesting, because I thought it was pretty common knowledge that you've been for quite some time actually. And so it was in the long-term plan, and it's finally being rolled out, much to the delight generally
Of permanent residents.
of probably permanent residents, but we're here for the community, aren't we? And it's the permanent residents that are going to certainly benefit from it. Not only that, but the environment's going to benefit too, because it means we're going to divert all of this green waste from landfill into compostable material.
So there's just one simple question. If rubbish ends up in the green bin along with the food scraps, is it fair to assume the truck will refuse to collect them?
If the contamination level does get up, we would actually, yes, they would stop them. I'm not quite sure of how your wheelie bin system's set up. I know that in Christchurch we did have the ability to video our rubbish as it came in, and so we could actually look at it. We do spot audits. We work, it's a combined service between, and don't quote me here, but I think between Timaru, Waimati and ourselves. We have a joint waste minimisation. So we audit not only, well, we audit at the moment the yellow bins just to make sure recycling, and how often they do it and how many they do, I don't know. And I presume every now and then they would do a bit of an audit. The problem is if we get contamination level in either of them at one stage, the processing plant at the end will refuse to take that waste and it'll have to go to landfill. So, and again, you know, it doubles the cost of our disposal cost if we get rejection. So we're hoping, and admittedly green waste doesn't seem to be a major problem elsewhere. It's more contamination in your yellow bin that's more of a problem across the country. But my understanding is Mackenzie is pretty good and has got a pretty good record of managing their waste in a proper way. And that's just feedback I've had from Angie. So, but I could get her to bring you a report on contamination if you wish.
I think at this stage, it's more a matter of communication, just to the residents know to expect this.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just wondering if we could suggest getting Angie to come along and talk to the next meeting. But yeah, apologise, we probably could have slipped an item onto one of our agendas to say this was happening. So sort of comes up at Twizel on the agenda there naturally, but we've sort of slipped up there a bit. But Angie could come along and answer any of your questions about solid waste. So I don't think she normally comes along to these meetings, might be good.
And I think just in the short term, if we could just, via Chris, just send out a communication, whether it be on council Facebook page or other, just notify, and we could send a
community page. Tell people this is happening.
Yeah, but possibly that piece that went into the courier, we should probably circulate for all the other avenues.
That's the only way I knew about it.
Just for 1 minute, I'll just share you the publicity that is going to go out when the bins go out, Mr. Chairman. If you can see this, can you see that on your screen?
Yes, we can.
So let's compost food scraps, small branches, leaves. Your organic collection will start on the 21st. I've got that date right. That's good. And then, whoops. And then the second part of that slide is what you can put in your glass bin, what you can put in your recycling bin, what you can do in your organics and your rubbish bin, and what you can take to the resource recovery, because there's things that we can't fit into bins, but you can take elsewhere. So it gives people a pretty good guidelines to what we would like to see in each different bin. So you see here, they do have the food scraps, fruit, vegetables, bread and pastries and flour. cheese and butter, coffee grinds, dog poo. Oh, lovely, as long as it's wrapped in paper. Leftover meat, fish and bones can go into it. Then you've got fish and chip papers, pizza boxes, shredded paper. I was wondering if there was garden waste somewhere that I've missed. Food scrap schedule. Oh, yeah, garden waste, here it is. Yeah, most cut flowers, etc. They don't want bamboo, cabbage leaves. So hopefully that, not a bad information of that.
Yeah, so David, is council going to print copies of that, as in, there's about 180 holiday homes here, and it would be quite useful for that document to go into the house compendiums, if you like. Even better over time if it gets translated into Chinese.
Every house will get one. They'll get one with their bin. I would suggest maybe if it's going into a holiday home where a lot of people, it might be useful to get it laminated so that it actually lasts a little bit longer. I presume we'll just print it on some glossy paper. But I do believe it's going to be attached either to the lid of the green bin in a special plastic compostable waterproof bag that you can then throw that bag that it's in into the compost bin as being your first item. But yeah, so then people could take it out, but I do think it probably wouldn't last, hundreds of people reading it all the time. We'll certainly have others available, that it'll be on our website so people could print off copies if they do get worn out.
Right, let's move on. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Carol. I see Joni's also joined us, so welcome, Joni. Just before we move on to the action list, Matt, you've given us a wee bit of an update on the district plan reviews. Anything else from a council perspective that you'd like to share with us this time?
No, you beat me to it. I was going to go district plan review and green bin.
Great. Well, good that we're all on the same page.
Just so you all know about it.
Right, so let's move on to item 5.6. I'm on page 22 of the agenda, and we'll just work through the top to bottom. So on page 23, the first action being the Tekapo Western Car Park. I think we've spoken to that matter already, and we've agreed on a further action there for Scott. Tekapo Bus Shelter, we've just asked for that to stay on the action list for visibility because it will need to be resurrected in time.
And I guess that's part of this getting ready for visitors again. Some of these things that particular issue and the long vehicle and the parking at the church were all significant issues at the height of our tourist season. And it would be good to try and get them moving again before it happens again.
So the question is, what's the next step?
Yes, no, I think the question is, the bus shelters sat there, is there, are we able to resurrect that and shine a light on it again, and what is the next step for it?
Yeah, Joni may be able to update you. We've got some TIF funding, but I can't remember whether it's for Twice or Tekapo for a bus shelter.
2 bus shelters in Tekapo, one fairly permanent, I guess, and the other one, they're both mobile, but we envisioned one being fairly permanent. I can't remember the street names exactly, and the second one, I apologize, it's just not coming to mind here. Trying to learn street names in 3 towns at the same time. But we do have money, 60% funding for that. I'm working with Scott, our roading manager, to put in the just the final little documents they need, and then we can actually give them a schedule of when we'd like it to get done, and then actually do it. So there's nothing holding us back. It's us working through. The money's sitting there waiting for us. I agreed with you that this is something to do now because we do expect the crowds to come back. Yeah.
Thank you, Joni. Good news. Matt?
Just to see, so then on that basis, I think we probably want to just reconfirm that. Do we need to reconfirm the location of those bus shelters? I don't think we're in a position to fire ahead on agreement with the location that may have been previously discussed, because I from memory that those locations
Yeah, what I'd like to do, if it's all right, is to send out a document to everyone showing the two locations. It's quite flexible still at this point because first of all, we're specking out mobile bus shelters, but also TIF is aware that we plan to move them around town. But if we can give them and give you guys a head start and you can feedback where you think they might be best located. So I'm happy to send a drawing with our best guess on what we thought way back when, and then take advice from the community if we want to adjust that. But that decision does not have to be made in order to get the whole thing going and underway.
Very good. Thank you, Johnny. The next matter on page 24, the Tekapo walkway from Simpson Lane to main car park. Dave, was there any update from your side on that?
Yes, as you can see, Mr. Chairman, it's a project that we're suggesting goes into the next LTP. So basically, we haven't done any further work on that. I do think we're going to have a discussion before that, probably on what you want to do with Simpson Car Park and Simpson Lane and all the rest of it. So it may come up there, but until the council made some provision within the estimates, or equally, there are rounds of TIF funding that come up that might be doing this next TIF funding. I must admit, it's got a emphasis on Matariki, so it might not be applicable for this round. But basically, it's sitting there, Mr. Chairman, until we have another funding round. So to go into the next, as the recommendation says, it goes, come back up to you in time for it to go into the LTP, the next LTP.
Johnny?
Yes, thank you. Just to add to that, I can't see if I think it was Matt who was going to meet on site with Scott, or Scott was going to meet on site with a couple folks from the committee. I apologize, I can't recall who. He did actually hold that meeting maybe the end of last week. And I think he brought up, I think there was some kind of conversation as well about what the future of that walkway might be. Does that sound familiar to anyone?
Yes, it does. Of course.
With respect, David, it may be something that might be difficult to defer for practical reasons around the bus shelter, because you might have a bus shelter there.
That was one of the locations, Simpson, I believe, one of the movable bus.
Yeah, how do they get where they're going? It's a bus shelter with no connection to the village, essentially. So that's going to be a key linker with in the village, which is the reason why I guess we brought that forward and keep talking about it.
Matt?
Yeah, I had a concern when I read the last meeting, which I couldn't tell, unfortunately, that it had been put on a bit of a back burner. I feel that this particular project needs probably a little bit more priority around it in terms of that walkway from the car park to Simpson Lane. It's been on our agenda for a number of years with huge potential safety issues if we don't do anything. And whilst there is some cost that will be incurred in putting a boardwalk style path around the perimeter, I think the time it's potentially going to take to develop that area on a larger scale, which could impact all of these walkways.
We could bring you back a report about what's unallocated within the community.
Sorry, Dave, were you talking there?
I was speaking. We could bring you back a priority report about what's committed in your community board budgets and how much of that budget you could commit to this project if it was a high priority. I'm sorry, I can't generate money out of nowhere. So basically, if it's going to be a council priority, it's got to go through a council annual plan or long-term plan. And so, yeah, but certainly you've got some discretion over the money you've got. I'm not quite sure how much of it's been committed. I'd have to talk to the likes of Brian on other projects. As Joni said, we're still, and I'm not sure where the 40% funding for the bus shelters, the other 40% is coming from. So there's got to be a number of those things, and you have to lay up all those priorities.
Can I just ask, do we have any sense of cost around that, David?
I think Scott's done some estimates on it. It's a bit complicated because it needs cutting into the bank, and there's some different people's land there. It's not an easy project, and we did talk to the community board about it in our last walk around when we walked the lakefront project.
It would be good
If I could, I think I'm hearing the community say this is an important item for them, and that at least from us, we could give you some more detailed information that we have around it. And as Dave said, possibly suggest some ways to get at some money and to see if the likelihood of making it happen sooner rather than later. I think that's what I hear the community asking for.
Yep. If we have to bring something, if we bring a priority board, the report that you're suggesting, David, back to the community board, we can see if there's any opportunity there to release any money. We can certainly look for other funding sources, but it has to be linked with Matariki, as you've pointed out. And then if there's still a need, we can bring a report to council to release any funds if needed.
Angela, can I also ask you a
We're going to have
question?
to weigh it up with the other district priorities. So
Agreed.
That it wouldn't be a report just on that footpath. It would be a report on the needs for all footpaths throughout the district, and there is a need for footpaths within the district as well. So I just want to make sure that the community board doesn't see this necessarily being at the top of the district's list, because it may not be at the top of the district's list from a safety perspective and from a priority perspective. So that's why I was suggesting that we could put a report that could actually release some local money. But yes, we'd have to actually weigh up all those priorities against what the district's got in its needs for footpaths, etc., etc.
Agreed. That's the point I'm making.
And can I just ask a question, Angela, perhaps you can assist in understanding. Would there be any ability for funding or opportunity for funding from the Subdivision Development Reserve Fund for a project of this nature, or is it purely footpaths?
We'd need to actually take that back to council, and as David said, that would need to be considered in the light of other priorities as well. So if it was to be released from any reserve, that then gets a report brought back to council for a decision.
One of the things, Mr. Chairman, you'll see from the financial contributions we take, for some reason, Mackenzie District Council doesn't take any financial contributions within transport. They take it for water, wastewater, and they take it for recreation services. And one of the parts of the project, and look, I'm not sure what stage it is, maybe stage 2, I'm not sure whether Matt or Murray can help me here, but is to look at our development contributions and financial contributions, because we should be taking contributions for footpaths, for transport. You've got some quite big projects, roundabouts, things like that, safety improvements, what do you call them, crossings, areas like that, which we should be contributing as subdivisions go. For some reason, we don't take contributions in that space, and I think we need to. And so that's one of the reasons we've put the development and financial contributions policy quite high up on the list, because we have not only in Tekapo but in Twizel, we have a similar situation. We've got a lot of subdivisions with no footpaths at all in through Twizel, where we're getting densification. So it's something that we've got high on our list of to do in the district plan review.
Carol, sorry, there's a question from your side.
I'm still a little bit intrigued. What is the council's commitment to plan for Matariki that's costing a significant chunk of money?
It's not costing us any money at at the moment. What the TIF funding is, that's the money that gets provided from central government. They've provided, they provide funding for infrastructure, tourism infrastructure or infrastructure. This year, they're directly relating it back to the theme of Matariki. So it's not us spending money on that, it's the funding that's being given to councils, and it's a contestable fund that goes out to all the councils in New Zealand, and the theme around that is Matariki this year. So
Matariki boardwalk.
Matariki boardwalk, from the bus shelter to the village with signage.
Yeah.
Star Walk.
sorry, I couldn't hear that.
It's not a
No,
bit
no, all good. Let's move on. Right, Carol, anything else on there? Okay. So next action, the Tekapo Makatua Reserve. I think we're all up to date. Brian's given us an update on that already. Any further questions on that action? Okay. So we'll move on to the top of page 25. And again, Brian has spoken around the custodian of the hall and the need for a booking calendar. So we'll move on. The Tekapo proposed sports facility squash club. We've spoken to that matter as well. Sharon's given us an update, and Dave's also spoken to that matter. Top of page 26, Tekapo rabbit control. Dave, any update from your side on behalf of council regarding taking the lead role on that initiative?
Ryan and I had a very interesting meeting with people from Environment Canterbury, not only on rabbit control, but on wallaby control and wilding pine control. And we haven't had, I think there's somewhere in that I'm going to bring it up at the next Timokahi meeting. We haven't had one since then because of Christmas and COVID and a number of things. I've got one coming up in the next fortnight, so we will raise it. What we're thinking that might be the best, it would be really interesting, what would a integrated Tekapo rabbit control plan look like? That's something that we're talking about.
That's what we think. What do you expect?
Sorry, Dave, we just lost you for a brief moment. Are you still there? Can you hear us?
Were you too busy watching Coronation Street?
That's right, mate. This multitasking, there's limits to the Tekapo fibre.
I'm not sure where you missed out, Mr. Chairman, but Brian and I have had a meeting with ECAN where we talked about rabbits, wallabies, and wilding pines. And we haven't had a Timokahi meeting since your meeting, so I've got one in the next fortnight, so I'm going to raise it with them. One of the things we did raise is it's a very, very complicated in an urban area rabbit control. If you have a look at the rabbit control policies of ECAN, they are really geared for large rural properties and forests rather than urban areas. And we were wondering about, should we look at a specific rabbit control strategy for Tekapo itself, and what would that look like? So that's something that we're going to explore. I'll raise it at the next Timokahi meeting because that involves not only ECAN and ourselves, but it also got Lynn's in there. It's got Doc in there. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I think it's probably got Waitaki in there. Would be the fifth one. There was 5 of us. I think it's Waitaki, which isn't that sort of relevant to Tekapo, but. So leave it on the action list and I'll report back as soon as I know. I was sitting actually on the lakefront and I was surprised. I was there for 2 hours and I didn't see one rabbit. They must have all been at the golf course because I went up the golf course and there were hundreds up there, but there were none on I don't know why, but for some reason the other night there were none on the lakefront. So
there were a few around my place the other night.
Sorry? There
were a few around my place.
Yeah, I think all I can add to that is after our last year, we had a sort of bit of a shooting exercise. Then after that, we felt that wasn't that successful and needed to sort of considering a poisoning type option. talking to the ECAN staff, they probably favoured the shooting option, that they did think it was successful. If it was a regular ongoing program, you just got to chip away at it and try and control the numbers rather than ever aim for complete eradication, of course. But it seemed to be their take on it, but equally kind of acknowledged that there's no easy solution, and you just have to work it away at it long term. And that's where I started thinking about getting a little bit more expertise in pest control and coming up with a plan. Those contractors come up with a plan of how they'd address it, fund that over 2 or 3 years to really make an impact. It was the only way we're going to make an impact. But cost is going to cost a certain amount of money, so that's again how we fund that and prioritise that against other things.
Right, rabbit hunting we will go. Tekapo bike stands, Brian, you've spoken to that. Thank you for the update, and we look forward to that being fully commissioned. So we'll just keep that on the action list until such time as it's been completed. The Pioneer Drive landscape work, we're going to just include that in our walkabout with Brian on the 23rd. Tekapo CCTV cameras, there was some conversation around that. Dave spoke to Joni's report. Joni, just on that matter, there was just a question from the community board around the need to acquire quotations, because we understood that had already taken place. Would you like to just speak to that?
Yeah, I just got prices in last week from, not prices per se, but spec of what the exact equipment should be that we should order. I haven't yet moved that forward, but I think we do have to go and put forward a request for bids. Dave, 3 bids, and we pick from there. So I'm sure Allied, the person we've been working with, will respond to that. But I do think we're supposed to look for others as well. There might be another firm that may be up in Christchurch willing to drive down, and we can add some criteria to our, actually in this case, Dave, apologies, do we just go for lowest price, or are we able to put some criteria, some weighting around it?
It's over to you. I think the policy says we need a procurement plan, and if it's over $10,000 but below 50, we can go on 3 quotes. So we've just got to seek 3 quotes. So you don't necessarily, my reading of the policy, we don't, if we ask for 3 quotes, we don't necessarily have to receive them, because it depends on how much work's available. But I think you could put criteria around delivery, things like that. You know, we don't want to get the lowest price, but it's going to take 18 years to deliver, for example. And I think, you know, basically, I suppose, maintenance, quality of things. So you may want to put some criteria other than price in there.
Thank you, Dave. So maintenance remains a bit of a question mark as well, because I did get some schooling on this topic. Larger cities that have stop and go lights will use the same crew that's cleaning lights and changing lights there to also address the lenses of these cameras. They do need to be maintained fairly frequently. I've been said so. So I'd like to also have in place an estimated annual maintenance budget for the work as well. That's not part of the bid. I think the bid, Dave, is just to purchase and install. But as a council, we'd want to know what we were getting into in terms of our ongoing maintenance costs for these.
Can I just also ask, do we have, David, we've sorted out all the policy issues?
Yes, we've gone through and working with the police, and that's all been sorted out. So I think from a privacy issue, that's all been locked up and doing. I think, unfortunately, Tekapo doesn't have any street lights, but it might be something. The maintenance, don't have any traffic lights, so don't want to install any at the moment. But we could actually tie it into our streetlight maintenance contract potentially. So that may be something that might give us a cost-effective. I'm not sure how specialist the expertise is, but we need to just tie it into one of those maintenance contracts.
Right. I think the maintenance was mostly around keeping the lenses clean, not necessarily on any kind of high-tech CCTV knowledge itself. So, yeah, thank you.
And Joni, can I just ask, in terms of the requests for quotations that have gone out for stage 1, has stage 1 been clearly defined just in terms of, you know, the 2 cameras? I think we spoke about 2 or 3 cameras, and a recording device. Is that pretty much, the plan hasn't changed from there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's the package that I received from Allied in terms of their recommendation of how to break it down. And I'm just going to apologize that I haven't opened it and looked through it yet. So that would be our next report to you guys, is what that first stage would contain. Again, we're using their knowledge to help us best schedule the money and the expenditure. And then also we'd be going ahead trying to solicit 3 bids to do that part of the project. So the bids haven't happened yet. And I apologize, I'm still trying to get a look at the information they sent along.
Thank you, Jane. You can also just clarify in terms of time frame that we're still aiming for July this year?
Possible, yep. I mean, that's the goal, yep.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions on the CCTV? Right. The next action matter, I think, was just for information. It was the request from Tekapo Trails to develop a trail on an uninformed road to Willow Bay. And I understand that council met and that it has been endorsed by the Engineering and Service Committee at a meeting in February to have a catch up with TJ, so she's pleased to report back on that. So is there any need for this action to remain on the list, or can we remove this action now? Right. Yep. Okay, so Eileen, can we remove that action from the action list, please? Bottom of page 28.
Yes, will do.
Thank you. Right, so we're on page 29, the Tekapo art donation. Again, I think that matter has been dealt to, so we can remove that action as well. And the last action, bottom of page 29, relates to the Tekapo Lines Corner maintenance, which was handed over to council some time ago. There's just some concerns there around safety from the operator's perspective of the garden mowing equipment. So we've agreed to just meet with Brian as well on the 23rd and just address or understand the concerns. So we'll just keep that action on for now, and in the next meeting, I'm sure that will be dealt with. Was there any new actions or further actions that needed to be added to the action list, or any further comments on any of those? Will be dealt with. Okay, and
Mr. Chairman, sorry, just a thought I think I heard earlier, but just, yeah, with our walkabout, I was originally wondered if we wanted to include contractor representative from Whitestone, particularly around this corner, because it's really concerns they raised, but also maybe have some ideas and discussion, particularly around that Pioneer Drive maintenance might be useful as well, if you're happy to have them along also.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Brian, and we've got all the right people there, so please go ahead and arrange for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And also just to acknowledge Angela, thank you for joining the meeting, that half of the meeting. I just wanted to also check from a community board perspective while Angela's online, was there any other issues or questions for Angela?
Did you want to get some clarification around the current stance on the mandating?
All fine. Okay. Right, so we're at 4:30. Probably a record for a Tekapo community board meeting. I remember the days when Angela was telling us off because our meetings were taking too long, and now we're going to be told off because they're too brief and too short. So, so yeah, it's nice to see a good swift meeting. Muzz, just before we do tune out, Murray, is there anything from your side?
No, I found one of your water leaks this morning down Lobbybank Road, but hasn't been fixed yet. But I have advised the council it's pouring out. Just the other thing, I just wondered whether Brian or Tom, did they want me to send something through about the original plans for behind Murray Place and what the history of that is? Because there was a bit of history around the clearing of the trees behind Murray Place and what was supposed to go in there. So
is that to do with the ton that's just in front of the cemetery?
No, this is not the Lions one. This is the track. This is a track that goes through there with the water line and the proposed planting of natives and that along the back of Murray Place, and clean the whole thing up, because the property owners are using it as their own property. But it was there were plans to do that, but there's a bit of history to it. But it's because it's a nice walkway actually, and I'd hate hate to think that when they do fire breaks and things like that, that maybe that wasn't taken into account when they redid that. But I can if you want, send you an email with and just show you what was originally proposed behind there, and to clean it up.
Yeah, that would be interesting, and that's partly I was raising. That whole area hasn't really come to our attention or my attention and up until now, and so I started realising there's quite a bit of land in there. We need to start thinking about how we might deal with it going forward.
Yeah,
and just like some of that history and really what's intended. Yeah,
because there are people building structures in there at the moment, and playhouses and furniture.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a no man's land at the moment, which we're probably going to should be starting to address how we're going to deal with it a little bit better.
Yeah, and I think if it had been tidied up as it originally planned, it probably would have been all right. But we did have a lot of public meetings over that, and some of them got pretty heated when the trees originally down.
So Mary, thanks for that. And if we could just ask if you could copy in the community board, just for the sake of continuity, so at least when we sitting on the Friends meeting as well, we will have the same understanding of background and context. Thank you.
One more thing I probably should have raised earlier as well. I have been working on some liquor ban signs as well with the compliance team at the council. So just to keep you guys in the loop, we are updating some signs that are going to go around the township, but we're just trying to clarify the area that those are going to go into. So
great news. Thanks, Tom. Great. So unless there's any other matters, just looking around the table. We're at 4:32. Eileen will declare the meeting closed. Thank you all for your attendance.